Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for 2023. Some of us didn't think we were going to get here. Some of us, when they wake up in January, it's time to kind of go and find something else. And that could be a change in diet, it could be a change in exercise, it could be a change in location. For some people, it could be a change in job. Now, in the board gaming space, there's a couple of places you can go if you want to change in job. What my guest today is one of the spearheads of, he's a person that actually helps other people potentially find jobs by putting the opportunities in front of them. And in fact, them themselves have recently tripped the light fantastic over from some place you could say where life was a bit old, forged from steam for them, where they're now moving from steam into ice. Well, not ice, frost, you could say. You could say this man, he may be Cephalofair, but he's also always known as being Cephalofair. It's the Crowdfunding Marketing Manager from Cephalofair Games. I've got Ross Thompson with me.
That is the great opening. Dr. Seuss would be proud.
Green eggs and ham. Green eggs and ham all the way, baby. Green. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you for the kind words there.
I mean, you have, you get a certain vibe out of certain people. And I follow you in a couple of different places, obviously on, and some strange, you're one of these people I see on LinkedIn. I always see you as somebody who is trying to do, when people talk about community, they actually, there's one thing about creating a community, which is let's gather a group of people together and then let's have, let me talk at them. And then there are people that say, I'm going to create a community and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and help kind of other people. And you strike me, not from your words, but from your actions as somebody who's actively going out and helping somebody. So I wanted to cover on a couple of things today.
Let's do it.
You've had and this is interesting because rather than look at Board Game Geek, which is where I'm actually looking on, it's linked LinkedIn. I'm going on to LinkedIn because you literally have been somebody who's been involved, you've been involved in the industry in a professional way for some time.
It's been obviously about 12, 14 years, I think, roughly, right? So, yeah.
I mean, all the way back from kind of like, your days like with Soda Pop and Cool Mini or Not. Remember when they called Cool Mini or Not?
Before they were CMON. Yeah, totally.
I just call them Come On. Because every time I look at their highest pledge level, I'm just like, oh, come on.
You're not wrong on that.
It's far too. Is it? Because normally because I see a lot of people kind of like in different kind of board game jobs, and some of them are doing it on a kind of like a part-time basis. From you being involved in the industry now for so long, and I'm making you sound like you're like some kind of old age wizard or something like that. Have you seen the kind of the game space with regards to kind of like kind of job opportunities and stuff kind of like change within the kind of like the last kind of 10 years?
Totally, right? So like I got my start in the industry at Privateer Press, and I came in as a volunteer. I worked for them as a press ganger, right? Like Games Workshop used to have the Outrider program, and everyone has their own ambassador program. And so, and I got, I had started my convention, right? I'd been volunteering for Privateer Press for a few years. I was 1 year into running my own gaming convention, and I had kind of done the circuit working shows for them. And my first job I ended up getting was a retailer support specialist
Right.
with Privateer Press, which at that point in time, they were in the middle of getting ready for Mark II. So I was helping out game stores organize in their tournaments and get support kits. And they
Mhm.
were in the middle of the public play test. So it was just listening to stores and their issues with, you know, hey, maybe you shouldn't do a public play test with models we're trying to sell right now, which is like a totally
Yeah.
legit. So it was that, right? And that was like, when you think of like what is an intro job into the industry, I kind of hit a nice beat because I'm like, cool, I already work with game stores. I can already do this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a nice intro job to have. And um, there aren't a lot of jobs that are that kind of way anymore because not a lot of companies are really doing organized play on that grassroots level, or when they
Yeah.
are, it's just a side thing by a marketing person or a PR person or the salesperson. So I'm kind of lucky that I was able to get a job. I didn't last there super long.
Mhm.
I think I was there. My constitution and my brain space wasn't. I had just moved. It was a whole thing. And then, funny enough, me coming back down like a year later from Seattle ended up kind of kickstarting the rest of my career because I ended up doing some side gigs for some other companies that way, but I wouldn't have been able to get that work without having done the convention circuit and then
Yeah.
being active on social media and even just in like a, hey, here's what I'm doing sort of way. So it's interesting when I look at the jobs that are available now. They're much more laid out
Yeah.
in, I mean, at big companies, right? Like when I look at like what Games Workshop's hiring for, and which is hiring for in Asmodee,
Yeah.
they've got director and manager and associate and specialist. And I
Yeah.
think those are the kind of words that people should look for. Like if they're trying to get their foot in the door, a specialist and associate is relatively an entry level job, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when it gets into like manager and director, that's you need to have some experience behind you and do everything there. But um, I think one of the big shifts on getting your foot in the door has been that working for companies at a show or like running events for them at game stores. But the big shift has been, is that a paid role or not? Because I
Yeah.
think sometimes the gaming industry likes to take advantage of people's want and desire to work in the industry so much so that we're like, oh, we'll pay you in product or we'll do these things. I mean, I had years where I would crash in a room with 6 other people and we'd all be working for a company,
Yeah.
running their booth and doing their demos, and then just get paid in lunch, a dinner, and then product at the end of it,
Yeah.
right? Where now that still happens, but that isn't the norm anymore, right? Most companies are
Yeah.
paying you minimum wage and doing all of that, which is much better to learn if you want to go into the industry, if you can afford it, right? Like, because going to work for like Renegade Games or Pandasaurus or whoever else at a Gen Con and an Origins is a really good way to kind of get your foot in the door and be like, cool, I want to work in this industry, or is that not for you?
Did you find it then it was useful with you being involved as you were with Kingdom Con? Was it easier for you to, when it came to kind of jobs, was it 9 times out of 10 when you were looking for another opportunity, was it a case that they were like, oh, Ross, how you doing? Have a seat.
I mean, it was funny
Let's
because
put the CV to one side. It's fine. How you doing?
yeah, it's funny because when I would apply or get interviews for stuff, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've worked at this company, I've done
Yeah.
this thing, and also I run a convention here in San Diego that
Yeah.
has all these things." And I mean, that was always just one more thing to do, and so like it was always that extra little bit. So my resume, it only grew, right? So it's
Yeah.
been interesting in the places that I've worked at. I think the convention definitely helped. But if people are looking to add a convention type thing, even just doing like a once a year charity thing, or hey, I run an extra life thing. There's lots of ways that people can get involved in the industry or running an event and
Yeah.
making like Kingdom Con was a business, right? And when I closed it down in 2019, we had about 1,700 people that had been attending for years. I had a crew and a staff of friends and that were co-employees and co-owners and runners and all that kind of stuff like that. And ending it was tough because I think we were at a point where do I want to do this not full time, but like if I dedicate a lot more time to this convention, it could have been one of the major shows on the circuit.
Yeah.
but also that was never the intent of the show. So I'm kind of glad that we got 10 years out of it, and then I didn't have to,
Did you have to put your foot down on it and say, right, this is getting beyond where I wanted it to actually be or where I'm comfortable with? Is that kind of where you
Totally.
were with? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had so many friends that had been helping out since the beginning with it, and it was not a Ross show. It was everybody's coming together to make it happen. Kind of, as you mentioned right at the beginning, like I like to bring people in. The convention grew because, we need RPGs? Cool, let's go find the guys that are running RPGs. We need more historical games? Great. Like San Diego is very blessed, and Southern California is very blessed. We have a very active tabletop gaming community. So because I wasn't such an established convention with lots of baggage, I'm like, hey, we have a ballroom. We can get you another space. You want to do a thing? Let's all come in and do that. But we were hitting a point where there were enough complications with the hotel, with what the convention was. We were about to grow from being a local convention to needing to get a lot bigger. So I was at a point where I was tired too. I think I'd been traveling. I mean, I went through my entire 20s essentially running a gaming convention, right? So being able to hit a point where I was like, I'm good. And then we ended up dodging a bullet because 2020 was COVID, right?
Yeah.
So we ended it on our terms.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have survived waiting 2 years through quarantine. I didn't have the back money to fund a failed convention 2 years in a row because of COVID, right? Like, so we ended it. It was great. Everybody had a good time. Everybody pokes me now and goes, hey, what's the plan? And I've done some I ran a thing with Comic-Con San Diego called D4 during quarantine, and that ended up being a big trade show. I think we did like 30 panels and special guest speakers, and I got to bring all these folk on and do that. And I know that they would love to do more too, but that's going to be under the Comic-Con banner, not under my banner, which is also just fine, right? So,
are you not ever kind of tempted to kind of say, okay, just a small one? You're not tempted to say, we're going to have, come on round to my house, we're going to have 10 people round.
It's very funny because I get people asking that. You're not wrong. Like every now and then I have to go, wouldn't it be cool if we just got everybody together for a weekend to play Twilight Imperium? Like a big one. Yeah. Or we did a big 40K thing. So like when we, right when quarantine ended and people could go out more, my buddies and I organized a big Warhammer weekend. And we had like 15 of us in an Airbnb. And I ended up making t-shirts. I got a model. I got a 3D printed and I made little journals for it, right?
Of course you did.
And everyone's like, Ross, not a convention, not a convention, not a convention. I'm like, yeah, I know. But also like, look, we have this cool shirt now and a miniature and a whole thing. Isn't that rad? So, yeah.
So has your career been kind of more guided by the community side of things, or has it been more guided by the actual board game side of things? Because looking at your career path, you can't have been more than, they say that in New York, you're never more than 8 feet away from a rat. So you can't have been in your career more than like 8 feet away from like a cardboard box full of kind of gaming glory. I mean, but what kind of made you, because I mean, you moved from end of September 2021, you went from USopoly to Steamforged. Now that's a lot of cardboard with, actually some people might say it was a lot of plastic. So, but is your career decisions, are they made over kind of like, where can I go in terms of the community that I kind of build, the network I can build, the contacts I can build, or are you going, I could be up to my eyes in these models?
It's a bit of both, right? So working at the op was great. I was there for a good long while, and they've got, I mean, I say good long while for me, but they've got people that have been there for 25 plus years, right? That company's been around for a long time. But like they're local to San Diego, and getting to work at a company that's local for you is awesome. But sometimes you just, I don't want to say bored isn't the right thing, but you get into a place where you're like, okay, I've kind of hit where I can be at. And I think maybe it's a millennial thing, right? Where it's like, where's my growth going to be in my career, right? And it's like, am I going to be able to be a manager or a director, or how is that path going to be? and sometimes you just kind of get stuck. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a job, and then Steamforged had reached out and was like, "Hey, what do you think about this role?" And I was like, "Oh man, like I had met Matt and Lox years ago at a War Machine weekend out in St. Louis before they had run Dark Souls, and they had just getting going with Guild Ball, right? And so I know they needed some trade help, and then they were like, "Hey, we need somebody to do trade, and we need somebody to bring our stuff to the U.S." And I was like, "Awesome! I love doing that kind of thing."
Yeah.
So yeah, just being able to come and do that was great. And their team is awesome. I loved being able to work for a UK company and try that out. So like when you say like, do I follow the product or the community? I mean, I'm not going to go work at a place that I don't trust, right? Like I like to have a banner that I can wave and be proud with it.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me. But even when I leave a company, like I'd like to think I left it better than I found it. So, which is good,
I mean,
so.
one thing I noticed at Steamforged, and the reason that we're talking at all, is that I do remember it quite, and I remember it because it was quite surprising, was that you jumped on to one of the Facebook groups and you said, "Hey, I'm from Steamforged, and I'm interested in reaching out to some kind of like reviewers and stuff like that." And to be honest, that kind of thing was a major surprise, a very, very pleasant surprise to do that. And that I could see that, and that was one of the things that was impressed with. And it wasn't, and there was part of me that's obviously like, are you going to be looking for people that have got 50,000 subscribers? Have you got guys that have got 17 million people on their Twitter account and stuff like that? But what kind of and I says, I've got to follow this guy and see what he's doing, was the fact that you seem to be like very, very welcoming, very, very open. And there was a definite kind of, I could see that kind of the fostering. It's like, no, I'm just going to see what you guys can bring to the table. And it was almost a case of, I don't care if you've got like 20 followers, or I don't care if you've got 20 subscribers. If you're bringing something slightly different to the table that I can maybe work with, that I can give you an opportunity. And that was kind of quite refreshing, because anyone that's been involved in the kind of the media side of it, know that there are certain kind of walls up, and it's not maybe intentional. And I understand, especially from the board game kind of publisher community, that if you put, the board game reviewers and media thing, every single time somebody puts a post up to say who's interested in reviewing my game, it's almost like there's literally like about 40 or 50 replies to the same thing. But you kind of started kind of fostering kind of this relationship, which was quite nice, quite refreshing, and then we kind of talked from there. With that, was it a different take? Did you get different takes from what you got back in terms of content for the kind of the Steamforged products and things like that? I mean, if I put a couple of TikToks out there, for instance.
You did. Yeah. It's so that group is a really cool resource, and I've made some big posts like that a couple times, and I think it's been, and thank you for the kind words on that. And it's in the board game review space, it's tough because not everybody's going to be a Dice Tower or a board game geek, or even some of these top level influencers, right? And so everybody wants to know they're going to send a game out and it's going to go viral and do a thing, but that isn't the real world, right? No. And so everybody has their own time they're able to dedicate to their channel. Everyone has their own reasons for what games they review and everything there. And I think one of the really cool things I've been very thankful for is getting to meet so many people in the reviewer community who are like, I am passionate about photography, or I'm passionate about mechanics reviews, or I'm passionate about this thing. And it's like, great, I've got all these games. Some are, co-op based, some that are miniatures head to head, or we have this, legacy campaign of this short little card game. What do you want to check out? And, if you don't get, 100,000 views in the first week, That's okay. Like, because everybody's going to find this stuff. Kind of the things that I care about is the quality good? Did you actually play the game and did you care about it? And then where you're sharing your content afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? Because those are things to me where it's like, if I send you a game and you play it, but not just once, but like you play it a few times and then take your time for a really cool review and you share your thoughts on it, and then it gets shared on your channel, it gets put in Board Game Geek and then a couple other groups and things. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and now that's all I can ask for, right? Like, and that's part of that influencer marketing where influencer marketing matters, right? And community marketing matters. And so it's just knowing that it's not that wide net, I think, where it's like, okay, cool. If I have 30 copies, everybody goes, oh, there's this 15 people you're always going to send it to. It's like, well, sure. But at the same time, if every single game publisher is sending all their games to every single person on that top list, then no one else is going to get the chance to shine and do that. In the 10 years that I've been doing this, I've watched reviewers go from, oh, I'm a person with a YouTube channel, to now being somebody that gets flown out by Asmodee to go lead a panel at PAX and then do a big thing or all this stuff, and then take a break and have a kid and then do what else and then come back, and it's like that's the life of it, right? Like, one person is not going to be your only. Even Tom Vassell has a crew that he works with, and people rotate through there and do all that depending on what they do. So being able to work with people and kind of figure out who's got strengths and who does stuff, especially right now, like with TikTok, like that's a whole untapped, even though there's people that already have 1 million followers in these things, we're still getting into that. And now the government may shut it down. So like, that could be a whole thing to get into, right? So, who knows? And so it's interesting. And I'm very happy to work. I mean, because we get to meet, because I did a post like that and a whole thing there. And I think with quarantine too, we all got, buttoned up in our spaces, and we had to figure out who was doing stuff. One of the coolest things we got to see that I definitely was tracking was, before quarantine, there were maybe 15 people that were streaming board games on Twitch.
Yes.
Right. It wasn't that many. No. Right. And then during quarantine and after, now we have like 100+ channels that are doing stuff on Twitch and YouTube that are like actively good. Like, they're not just like, here's my OBS TV setup and I have the weird camera angles. Like, people have put in the work to get the stuff and do everything. Video games, we're just following the video game path.
Yeah.
It was already done years ago too, and I wish more board. This is my, like, you're going to hear me on my rant, right? I wish more board gamers.
I'm here for this, Mr. T.
Yeah, I wish more board gamer streamers would like make the push to reach out to Razer and to Dell and to these things, and trying to get that same audience that video gamers are, and not because, hey, I'm going to reach the same audience, but I'm going to reach a different audience, right? It's people that are watching the Twitch streamers for board games aren't watching the video game stuff. And so I think that if we can tap into some of those things, there's a cross promotion there. And I know everybody's thinking about that kind of stuff, but it's the kind of things where I look at and it's like, okay, well, the YouTube channels that are doing well because of that. So like, one of the things I really enjoy is reaching out when it's time for a new game promotion and being like, cool, who do I want to pick? But while I'm always going to pick certain channels, I love what new channels have I seen something of them do on an Instagram post or a TikTok or a video? And I'm like, now I get to reach out to them and be like, hey, I love your stuff. Do you want to check out this thing? And now, being at Cephalofair, what a blessing it is, because Gloomhaven and Frosthaven are so well loved. Isaac and Price and BJ and have put in such a good work with the community that people love this game and this company.
Yeah.
So it's been really nice to kind of just step into this already house party going on. Everybody's having a good time, and now we get to figure out where we get to rock and roll.
Is it because coming from Steamforged, we're literally, it is a case, you've got so many video game IPs. You've got the original stuff that they've done as well. Your Bard Songs. You've got all the Dark Souls IPs, and now you've got Elden Ring and everything like that. Is it kind of is it kind of like a different approach? Is it slightly strange for you now to be back to saying, oh well, we've got Frosthaven and we've got Gloomhaven, And that's kind of and obviously there's founders of Gloomhaven, Ross. Do we talk?
Oh, I know. It's so.
Do we talk about our founders of Gloomhaven?
It's really neat, right? Because it's funny. Somebody else yesterday was referring to me as the licensed board game guy,
Wow.
and I'm like, how funny is that? Because I've worked at the Op in IDW, in Steamforged, which are all like major IP holders for board game space. But like when I think about my personal roots, I'm like, okay, like Warhammer, Magic the Gathering, D&D, stuff like that, Privateer Press stuff, which is all like kind of original IP.
Yeah.
It's neat when we look at all these big license game stuff. Like at Steamforged, we were able to tap into the Dark Souls community, the Horizon Zero Dawn community. And then after I left, obviously they were able to get into the Elden Ring space. But they've made games that kind of embrace that the same feeling on the tabletop, right? And so, like with RuneScape, when we did the RuneScape Kickstarter, we got to write in-game announcements for the video game, right? So they were announcing the Kickstarter in the video game.
That's cool.
Like, how cool is that, right? So it's that weird boat where it's like at a certain point we're all gamers, right? Even if somebody is like a video gamer or a role play gamer or a board gamer, at a certain point the umbrella reaches over. So being able to come into a Cephalofair where they already have people who have played Gloomhaven through like twice or 3 times with this one character and this character here, and now they're jumping into Frosthaven and getting to do this. One of my major questions was like, like kind of reading in on everything is, how do we handle spoilers, or how do we handle this? And just diving really deep on how the community handles those things is just so cool. And it kind of goes to show you that, some games are lifestyle games and some are just enjoy stuff. So it's always kind of neat to see what the different communities for each company are.
I can't imagine anybody actively spoiling Gloomhaven, to be honest. I think it's almost like, do you remember when The Force Awakens came out? And even though there was that huge, and it's, that huge thing with Mr. Solo, I still remember people kind of like refusing to kind of go out and kind of like talk about it. People kind of like, and there's certain things there's certain kind of media and shows that kind of adopt that. I don't remember. I mean, I've started watching and devouring Better Call Saul, but it's almost like people are like, it's not a case that people are standing there and going, he's going to become a bad lawyer or anything like that. You got to watch out for this bit here. And then this thing happens. People are sitting there and they just want to see, I'm sitting here passively and quietly, and I just want to see how you react. And I want to see if you react exactly the same way that I reacted.
Enjoy the journey as we go on, right? Totally, right? And that's, I think a lot of we're going to get deep, but like a lot of our culture right now is absorbing these entertainment things, right? And how we do all that and everything there. I got to introduce my parents to Avatar: The Last Airbender and Clone Wars during quarantine, right?
Wow.
Because we had watched Mandalorian and they were like, who are these characters? And I'm like, okay, because they were in my pod. So I was going over on Sundays so we could, watch these things. And I'm watching them get to like certain parts in Clone Wars where it's like major character reveals or these things. And like, because my parents are big nerds, right? So, but they just hadn't watched it before. And so getting to see them, and you're just like, when that light goes on or the like they started watching Game of Thrones and I was like, oh, cool. Like, can't wait to see how that all goes, right? And so I would get texts being like, I can't believe this just happened. And it's like, right?
They're having a wedding. And one of them's wearing chainmail. I hope nothing happens here.
I hope nothing happens. Right. But with Gloomhaven, it's been just fine. And just seeing how the community embraces that has been really neat. Mm-hmm. And as we go forward, it's going to be cool too, because we're getting ready for this next big campaign. So, which is always fun.
And what big campaign would that be?
Yeah, right. So at PAX Unplugged for Cephalofair, we announced that we're going to be doing the Gloomhaven RPG and Miniatures of Gloomhaven campaign on backer kit in April. So
here's a question for you, and it's either going to sound stupid, or it's going to sound, and hopefully it's all back in the away in the past, and this has all been sorted out. But what system are you using for the Gloomhaven RPG? It's not.
It's going to be a Gloomhaven proprietary system. So.
Wow. So you're avoiding any of this OGL kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, that's. We'll wait and see what happens with. I mean, we're not going to get into that conversation, but no. So we're definitely doing a Gloomhaven proprietary system. So.
Oh, cool. Are you being part of kind of getting involved in that? Have you had your chance to get your eyes over it and muck around with it? Or are you?
So one of the things that I do when I'm at a company. Is I try to see what's going on and help out where I can, but it's not a priority for me, right?
Yeah.
As a marketing person, I like my excitement to be genuine.
Yeah.
So I try to learn enough about the game to make sure I can speak to it and understand how to market, but I don't want to play it so much that I've already played it for when it's time for everybody to be excited, if that makes sense. Right?
Oh, no. I mean, that's why I don't...
Yeah.
Why I do a little bit of research for people before they come on. I genuinely kind of just touch over it. So if I find out something about somebody at that time, then the surprise there is genuine, as opposed to, well, I just know this, so I'm just acting anyway for this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. So with this so far, like, I mean, I'm 3 weeks into the company so far, and everything's remote. So it's been fun. So we have a lot of really cool stuff in the works, which I'm really jazzed for. So I have come into the company at an exciting time.
Is it kind of interesting because Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, essentially like, as Shut Up and Sit Down called them, elegant dungeon crawlers. I still remember that video where Gloomhaven was called elegant, and then Paul Dean turned up and said, "Are we sure?" Are you having to look at approaching this campaign slightly differently from the Frosthaven one? Are you looking at are you trying to appeal to people who are fans of Frosthaven, who in Gloomhaven who might be interested in RPG, or are you going to say, like, let's see what the RPG set kind of are going to think of this? Well,
without getting too much into it, because I don't want to spoil anything, right?
I know that.
I think one of the major things we're going to be looking for is it's going to be on backer kit.
Yeah.
Which I think is different than any previous campaign for Cephalofair. Everything has been on Kickstarter and everything there.
Yeah.
And backer kit presents an opportunity to be a reinvention of the crowdfunding platform.
Okay.
Right? Like, at the end of the day, people are going to be pledging for a product, and it's going to be a while until you get it and everything there. But it's going to be cool. I think people know what Gloomhaven is, and it's one of those games that kind of transcends board gaming.
Yes.
Right? Like, in a sense where video gamers play it, role play gamers play it, board game players know it, right? It's kind of like that Xerox or Catan sort of thing where it is like, when you think big dungeon crawl game, Gloomhaven is the one you think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's right up there. I mean, it's approaching kind of Hero Quest levels of notoriety now. I think it's one of these games that if people saw it sitting in like a local kind of video game store, because video game stores seem to be selling board games now, that the people would go, "Oh yeah, Gloomhaven, yeah, I know that. I've seen that. I've seen that spoken about and talked about and stuff like that as well."
Look about like when Jaws of the Lion got into Target and it was like sold out that first week, right? Like it go to show that you can sell a $50 hobby game in Target, so, which is mind blowing still.
Circling back, because I'm aware, I'm conscious we're on a time. We have a budget of time. I would talk to you all day, but you've got a job, and I just like to waste time. But one of the things you are involved in is the tabletop kind of jobs board.
Mm-hmm.
And as somebody who has been involved in the industry, I'm going to put you on the spot. And I'm going to say, if I'm looking for a job in the board game industry, what would be the top, say, 3 bits of advice that you would give to somebody who's considering a role within the tabletop industry, based on the jobs that you see and stuff like that?
I would say And first off, that group is great. And if
Yes.
anybody is looking for a job in the gaming industry, Jessica Fisher and I are very happy that group has become a resource.
Yes.
And if you're not on Facebook, if you go to the Gameosity website, which is her review site for board games, she has a whole job section where she posts those monthly as well.
Mhm.
So you can find it all on there. But I would say for the first piece of advice is actually think about what you want to do in the industry. Because I think too many people just want to work in board games and don't think about what job they actually want to do.
Mhm.
So they go, oh, cool. Yeah, I want to do marketing. I want to do product management. I want to do something. It's like, cool. Well, actually think about that, right? Because as many jobs as there are in other industries and spaces, there are that with board games too, right? Someone has to do the product management. Someone has to do the shipping logistics. Someone has to do
Mhm.
accounting in HR, in graphic design. I know everybody wants to like be a graphic designer or be a game designer or be the person that talks on stream. But like that's only one small pie of all the jobs that have to happen to make a game go from the creation to the shelf.
Yeah.
So I think people should think about what do they actually want to do, because I think a lot of the times I get hit up like, Ross, who's hiring? And I'm like, cool, I have to check out this group. And
Yeah.
they're like, I'm like, what do you want to do? And they're like, oh, I just want to work in the industry. And I'm like, well, that doesn't help because there's all these
exactly. I want
there's
to
all
work
these
in a
openings,
restaurant,
like-
Ross. It's like, well, do you want to be the chef? Or do you want to be the maintenance guy? Or do you want to
Yeah,
be the
right.
busman
So
or the maitre d', or, you know?
yeah. So I think that's really important to do.
Hmm.
Second, I would think is everybody says like, oh, tailor your resume for these things and do this stuff. But at the same time, you have to start somewhere. And a lot of people that get into games come from other degrees, like in other fields. So it's okay to include the other fields that you've been in,
Yeah.
but definitely include, like, if you've worked at convention and you've run the game library at a convention for like 5 years, include that in there, right? If you've done some graphic design or you've done some play testing with some stuff, include that in there, right? Those are important things that like people want to know that you're into the stuff. You don't have to have a encyclopedic memory of like every single D&D book ever, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, it's good to know that you have done something when you go to do that. And then the second piece of advice, or third piece of advice I would give is take advantage of the opportunities of companies that are looking for booth workers and people to work shows.
Yeah.
That's how I got my way in. I'm not saying it's the only way in,
Yeah.
but people are like, hey, how do I meet people in the industry? And I'm like, man, go work a Gen Con for a company and you will see how they do it. You'll get to meet all the people that work there.
Mhm.
Try to go to some of the after connection things and hang out and do that kind of stuff. But if you can hop into that and just work a show or two, it gives you a really nice kind of snapshot at what that's like. I go to like 12 shows a year, right? And if we have people that obviously we pay them and do all that, but we have people that are working the booth and do that, and they want to get into the industry where it's like, cool, like, awesome. If we've got somebody who's working hard and they want to do logistics and stuff like that, you know,
Yeah.
we can introduce them around. And so I'm not saying it's a guaranteed way to get in, but at least like working a booth will give you a good opportunity of what it's like, who's there, who's doing stuff. And I know it's expensive to get out there and it's not for everybody, but that's a good way to do that.
Cool. Finally, what's exciting you about games at the moment? Is there any games that you're playing at the moment that have got you excited, that you've been having a lot of fun with?
Oh, sure. I mean, work-wise, I'm playing through Jaws of the Lion right now.
Yeah.
Which is a blast. And I've been playing with my D&D group. We're taking a break from D&D and playing Jaws of the Lion. That's been awesome. Like, I'd always know that Gloomhaven was really good. I've really enjoyed it. My whole group, we're big into it. I don't have to DM right now, so that's even better.
Yeah.
Because I can just hang out and play and do all that. So we're really enjoying Jaws of the Lion. And then I was at a board game day the other day with the Going Analog crew. And we got to run through a bunch of games. And we played Flamecraft by Cardboard Alchemy.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
It's adorable. Like, you're trying to find these dragons' jobs in the fantasy market. So like, oh, this dragon should go work at the butcher shop, or this dragon should go work at the potion. It's just a cute little game. It could probably be a little longer, But the art's great, the mechanics are fun and everything there. So that's really good. And then I'm gearing up for Las Vegas Open right now, so I'm getting my 40K army ready. I'm not going to play any tournaments, but my friends are going to go out and do all that. So I'll be playing some more Hammer.
You can take the you can take the paint out the game, but you'll never take the game.
I'm still going to go to miniature gaming tournaments and do all that. I'm not going to. It's funny because I used to run War Machine tournaments all the time and be a pretty pro in the War Machine scene. But then after I came back down, I'm like, I don't want to play in wargaming tournaments anymore. I just want to play with my friends and have a good time. So
it sounds amazing. It sounds like 2023 is going to be an interesting year. Not interesting times, but an interesting year. No matter what happens, it sounds like this year is going to be something to even consider putting a journal together for your good self. If people want to keep an eye on what Ross gets up to during the year of 2023, where do you exist on the internet webs? Where can they find you?
So I'm on Facebook. I'm on at Ross Thompson. Feel free to add me or use that follow button.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Almost Kirk, like the Star Trek.
Yeah. I don't want to ask, but I'm guessing is it because you were almost Kirk or?
It was a gamer hashtag handle thing, right? All right. I'm just glad I didn't go with Beerzerker. So. So Almost Kirk is that. And then funny enough, you brought up LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn too.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm on LinkedIn every day. It's interesting, right? Because everybody's like, oh, LinkedIn's for business. And I'm like, yeah, but the toy and games industry and the hobby games industry, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And I love keeping up to date on what's in those spaces. And LinkedIn's a big part of that. So I find a lot of the jobs for the jobs group on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So, and they aren't posted anywhere else. So tabletop game companies are the worst at posting their own openings on their website. It's awful. I could give a class, a PhD level class on how game companies post it and the depths I have to go look for these openings. And it's all my free time. And, so I don't spend too much time on it, but sometimes I get an hour and I'm just going to go do a deep dive. Right. So,
yeah. And we're going to make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes, so we have got notes to show. If you want to follow us, go to the internet web, search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us in all the worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races. You'll find us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and on our main website where the podcast reside, which is we'renotwizards.com. You can also find it on We're Not Wizards podcast.com, but if you want to read our words, then you can go to we'renotwizards.blogspot.com or we'renotwizards.co.uk. If you like what you listen to tonight, then consider going to the Appley podcasts full of Appley goodness, because it helps keep the doctor away, and give us a rating or a review if you are going to be giving us a rating or a review. Don't give us 10 stars because I know I'm lovely and adorable and, highly entertaining, but if you give me 10 stars, it makes me really, really big-headed. At the same time, do not give me 1 star, because that will make me crash and burn, and you don't want to make me cry. But give us something in the middle, like a 5, because that's average, and we are just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight, he's got the jaws.
I wish you could see how big my smile is right now.
He's got the jaws of the job line open. He's sticking his head right in there, and he's searching out these jobs like gold crowns in a lion's mouth. It's a rather wonderful, rather fantastic Ross Thompson. Thank you very, very much for being on the show, Ross. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad that we can do this, and and thanks for having me on, man.
I've got one more question.
Okay.
Now remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Ross?
Oh, yes, we are. Of course we are.
Oh my God. What? You've just ruined everything.
Oh, we're not. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you've just
We're not wizards.
You've just ruined it.
Sorry.
Just ruined it.
That's the podcast.
Just ruined it. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the last minute disappointment, the man who made me cry, I'm going to be like looking through the window like Joey out of the episode of Friends when the rain's pouring down the window pane. That's going to be me. So it's a goodbye from Ross. Say goodbye, Ross.
Goodbye, everybody. And that's right. We're not wizards. We're not wizards.
Wrecked it. Last hurdle. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful. And, I was going to be in Happy Haven, but it turns out I'm in Gloomhaven. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.